I'm going to can some diced tomatoes today, and I'm using my new Ball FreshTech water bath canner. So if you want to see that process, keep watching. I'm using the raw pack method for this particular process. If we're just meeting, I'm Denise Jordan, and I teach traditional homemaking for today's homemaker. So if you want to learn more about making and keeping a home, subscribe and double tap that little bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Okay, let's talk about these tomatoes. I've gotten quite a few tomatoes from my kitchen garden this summer, so I thought I would take a few of them and can them for diced tomatoes because I use diced tomatoes a lot in my cooking. And I thought you might enjoy watching how I do that. And since I've got my new Ball FreshTech water bath canner, I was waiting over a month for it to get here. So now that it's here, I want to give it a try. So let's do that. So the first thing I did was give them a good rinse, and now I'm going to blanch them, and I'm going to do that by putting them in a hot water bath and then immersing them in an ice water bath, and that'll just help the skins just kind of split, and I can just peel the skins right off. Then I'm going to chop them up into the little size pieces that I want for my diced tomatoes, and I'll pack them in the jar, and then I'll put the jar in my water bath canner. So what do I need to get started? Well, some tomatoes, of course, and canning jars. And I've got my canning jars in my water bath canner already, and they're just sitting in there nice and warm until it's time to pack the tomatoes in them. I've also got my canning lids on the stove right here, and they've already been washed, and they're just sitting here in the hot water. So I've got my jar rings right here, just got them lined up. They've already been washed and dried, and they're just sitting waiting to be used. I've got a spoon that I can use to scoop the tomatoes into the jar. I've got my jar lifter, my lid lifter, a knife to chop the tomatoes, and then I've got a funnel that I can use to fill my jars. I'm also going to be using some lemon juice. I'm going to be adding a tablespoon of lemon juice to each of my jars just to increase the acid content. And it needs to be bottled lemon juice because that way I know the acidity is the same and I shouldn't have any problems with them doing what they need to do. Don't want to end up with any problems with botulism later on. I'm going to score these tomatoes just to make it a little easier for the skin to come off. Just making a little X on the bottom of the tomato, just like that. And then I'll drop it in the hot water bath. So I drop these tomatoes in the water bath for about 60 seconds, and then I'm going to take them out and put them in the ice water bath. And when the skin split, I'll just peel them right off. You put them in the ice water bath because the ice water helps to stop the cooking. Removing the core just makes the whole process that much easier. The skin comes off nicely. Now I've got a whole tomato. Now I'll dice up the tomatoes in the size that I want. just say, this is messy business. I've been trying to keep things neat for the camera, but it's pretty messy. And you can see these tomatoes are filled with juice. If there's any cores or impurities left, I can get those out now. Now I'm going to fill my jars. They've been sitting in the water bath. And I'm going to fill them to within a 1/4 inch of the top of the jar. That's called a 1/4 inch headspace. We'll see how many I end up with. And I won't need to add water in the jars because I've got plenty of juice. I'm using a slotted spoon so I can let the juice drain out initially. I can always add some once I've got all the tomatoes packed in, but now I'm adding a tablespoon of lemon juice to each jar. That just helps with the acidity. Looks like I've got 6. So now I'm going to just kind of dance this little spatula around in the jar to try to get all the air bubbles up to the top. Saw a big bubble. I thought I had them all out. Guess I'll give them another once over. Okay, they look pretty good. Now I want to make sure the rims of my jars are nice and clean, so I'm going to wipe them off with a clean cloth. Some people like to wipe them off with vinegar. Others just use plain water. Important thing is that they are nice and clean. And I'm using what they call the raw pack method. So these tomatoes have been blanched and immersed in ice water, but they have not been cooked, so they are still basically raw. I must have the noisiest ice maker in the world. Now I'll get my lids on them. And the lids have been just sitting in hot water. Just waiting for me to come and get them. And this little magnetic tool here helps me to lift the lids out of the water bath they were resting in. Now I'll put the rings on. And the rings just go on finger tight. So you put them on, give them a little twist, and then turn it back. Twist it, and then just twist it back a little bit. And you always want to use new canning lids. But this year, there is a shortage on lids. So some people have been reusing their canning lids. That is not advised. Best practice is that you use them once for canning. You can use them later on for other things, but and I'm going to just wipe the jars down just a little bit, just to make sure there's no tomato juice left on them. I prepared 7 jars, even though I didn't think I would need 7, but it's always better to have one extra than to find that you don't have enough. So I'm going to just set that one aside, and then I will get these jars into the water bath. And you want to get them in there as quickly as possible because you don't want your jars to break from thermal shock. So now I've got my jars in. So I'm going to put this lid on top of that. This rests on top of the canning jars. And then I'll put this lid on. And now I turn the canner up to the canner setting. So I can't believe how easy this was. So now that my jars are in the water bath, I'm going to let them process for 85 minutes. And you're probably thinking, 85 minutes? Well, this is a raw pack. The tomatoes weren't cooked prior to going in the jar, so it takes a little bit longer when you do a raw pack compared to when you cook the tomatoes and put them in the jar already cooked and hot, that kind of thing. So I'm going to set a timer for 85 minutes and then I'll get them out. So while they're processing, I'm going to clean up my mess and then go and take care of a few other things, and then when the timer goes off, I'll come and get them out. But let me ask you this. What kind of goodies have you been showered with this summer? Have your family and friends been loading you down with tomatoes or cucumbers or zucchini? Let me know in the comment section below what kind of goodies you've been blessed with. Well, my timer has gone off. They've processed for the last 85 minutes. I let it sit in the water bath for another 5 minutes. Now I can take the lid off and get my jars out. So let's do that. Notice I opened the lid away from me so the steam goes out that way and not towards me. And it's okay that the liquid and the tomatoes have separated just a little bit. I can just shake them up when I'm ready to use them. So now I'm going to let them sit on the counter for the next 12 hours. And one of the things I'm waiting for is for them to seal. And what will happen is when there's enough of a vacuum in the jar, you'll hear a little pop. And that lets you know that they've sealed. Once they've sealed, I'll take the ring off like this. You can see here on this one where it's nice and flat here at the top. So this jar is definitely sealed. But if the ring was on and it's keeping it in place, I may think it's sealed when it may not actually be. So I'm going to take the rings off of those once they've sealed. And while I'm waiting for those to seal, I'm going to go ahead and drain the water out of this pot. And it's kind of nice that I don't have to worry about trying to lift this whole big heavy thing up. I could just scoot it over closer to the edge, open the spigot and drain the water into the sink. It's been about 24 hours and these jars turned out beautifully. They sealed nicely, and I've got the date written on the top so that I know when I pack them away. And the next thing I'm going to do is take the rings off, because you don't want to store them with the rings on, because I don't want to get a false seal. I'm pretty pleased with the way they turned out. This is the first time I've tried this raw pack method, and it works beautifully. One of the things I did notice yesterday when I first took them out of the canner was that the tomatoes had risen to the top and you could see some of the juices at the bottom, but I just inverted them gently and a couple of times, and then the juice distributed among the tomato, and so now it's just fine. So I can keep these in my pantry shelf for anywhere from 12 to 18 months, but I will use them up long before then. And if you like this video, you might want to stop back and take a look at my video on how to freeze tomatoes. It's just a little video short, and it just shows you really quickly how you can freeze them if you don't want to go through all of this process. And then also my video on how to preserve herbs. I had a nice little crop of herbs in my kitchen garden, and I also put those up for winter. So come on back and check those out. I'll link them with an iCard above and in the description box below. And just so you know, I've raised 3 children, and I have managed a home for more than 45 years. So if you want to learn more about making and keeping a home, subscribe. I can teach you to be a traditional homemaker in an untraditional world. In the meantime, this is Denise Jordan saying, you are not done yet. Click on the link in the comment section below and check out my video on how to preserve the herbs. And I'll see you next time.